there. And I have an update about the Kriegsman cosplay I've been working on. And I'm just going to jump right into it. Really no introductions. Let's start with the simple stuff. The gun, I only really worked on the bayonet. I'm going to be working on the handguard and some other covering parts, some shroud parts on the body. But I finished the structure of the bayonet. I haven't painted it or anything. So I have that here, right? And it's a dual system. So I can pull that right out. And I rely mostly on the magnets that I have put in between. And also a little screw I built in. I kind of went over this in the first video, but here it is finally put together. Right, so you have that. And the reason for that is because I have to screw this in. It doesn't slot in or lock in. So, what I can do, fix that around the barrel. And then this can just twist in while holding the bayonet in place. There, and that is twisted in. And then, now if I want to just take it out, I can leave that there, and I can still pop the bayonet right on into position. And the magnet holds it in pretty well. I'm going to kind of work on the actual excess glue, kind of wear that down a bit, so that it'll still pop down further, but still have a bit of a snug fit at the top there. So I think it came out pretty well. As far as the foam used, it's just 10mm EVA foam that I cut out and hot glued together. Inside, however, let me take this part out. Inside here, and then actually inside the, I don't know if the camera can pick it up that well. Yeah, there it is. Are two metal rods to give a little bit of rigidity down just in this length, so that it's still somewhat flexible, still somewhat stable around the base. Okay. The second simplest would probably be the box, or the chest piece, the mask respirator box that's on the front. So I got that here, and it's nowhere near finished, but I'm just kind of putting a template of things on there. Let me get these strings. That's the one thing I hate about hot glue, is all this little stringy pieces that kind of get stuck everywhere. Basically, I'm going to go through this with a nice fine file, fine sandpaper, and get rid of a lot of the excess, because you can see a lot of like excess glue around the panels. But so we're going to really spend some time cleaning this up, and then I'm going to touch it up with some little fine brushes, basically fill in the blanks on this. Get in the background here. Okay, gotta make sure it's in frame. But what I like is I have the magnets up top that kind of clasp it shut. I have the actual hose that goes to the mask. All of this is just a bit of paper and 2mm foam that's been cut out into the stencils. But inside here is actually a fan. Right there. So there's a fan in there, and that's going to basically help suck air through here from the mask and help with fogging. I do plan on widening these holes as well, just again to improve the ventilation. But even with that, it's still pretty open here at the top, right? On both sides. So that'll help with more passive ventilation. So we updated that. We got that put together. It will actually have air flow out properly. Again, just hot glued, touched up with a bit of super glue in some key areas to hold it all together. And there's enough space in there to where I can, of course, hold the battery for the fan in there. So that's very nice. But the key thing that I like, and I'm gonna, on the side of the screen, I'm gonna have little short clips and photos of the process, but my favorite thing oh yeah, I don't know if I can, man, my voice is really loud in here. I like how it came out. So hopefully with the windows kind of open here, with the more natural lighting, that some of the details come out pretty well in this. All right, let me try to get this guy in frame so you can kind of see a nice close-up. Just kind of panning around to show y'all some of the details and everything. Now there's, of course, going to be a pretty harsh glare. I can't control the sun. Come on, guys. But, just some little splatter points. Basically, what I started off with is I started by, what did I start with? Did I do the helmet first? I gotta actually check my notes. Because I can't remember off the top of my head if I did the mask first or the helmet first. It went by so quickly, it kind of all melts together in the memory. Okay, my notes are gone apparently. Very cool. But basically, you split it into sections. Here we go. Okay, so yes, I did wrap up the mask first. So I had the mask wrapped up, covered basically everything from here down, and I painted this with just one coat of the lead belcher mixed with Abaddon black. And I actually have the paints here. There I go. I saved all the paints. Yeah, that's yeah, there we go. So basically I mixed the air for the airbrush, right? It was these two, Lead Belcher and Abaddon Black. I mixed it in, I would say 3.5 Lead Belcher to 1 Abaddon Black, because just in general, black can overpower practically anything, so a little goes a long way. But I wanted to darken it up, and I sprayed the whole top section with that. When that was finished, I then reversed that. I then covered the entire top section, right? And then painted all this brown. That was just a standard brown spray paint that I had, because as far as the right shade I was looking for, I couldn't find it with the airbrush colors, because I wanted a darker leather. So I put that there. I then painted this separately at the bottom, left that covered, and repeated that recipe down here. From there, you go into the initial stages of weathering. So the first layer, I don't know what you would properly call it. I call it structural weathering. because all these little chips and cracks, those were already pre-painted. No, printed, yes. Printed as a part of the helmet structure. And I basically just filled it in with silver in like a flat steel to basically act as the base metal so that this darker color is more of a finish. I then painted it, these bolts the same color as that, and as well as the crest. What else? Basically, once that was done, and I kind of darkened up the stitches on the leather, but once that was done, I sealed it with a clear coat. So that was the first layer, and then I basically went around, and there's no real pattern to it, but are just in the nooks and crannies, you know, building up with different oil colors. Someone's vacuuming in the background. Thank you, very cool. But things like this Agrax Earthshade, you know, some of these little oil shaders and so forth. I would kind of drip around, you know, so you kind of see the drips here and in the back, you know. I would kind of put those around, maybe build them up in the crest, and let that dry. Don't try to, you know, spread it out too much. Let it actually build up and then dry on its own, so it kind of gives that layered look. And then I used these. These are for models, for smaller models, but I had these in storage, right? And I mostly used the soot and rust from this one. I used a little bit of the regular sand, but I used quite a bit of the mud. But I used those and smeared those into specifically into the cracks and into places where I thought it would build up. I used the oils, the shaders oils, quite a lot on the seams. Right here, you know. Quite a lot on the seams. And then with a different, sort of a slightly lighter brown, I would go over the high points. I would dry brush it so I get a little wet and so forth, and remove a lot of the paint, and just very lightly swipe across the ridges. And it gave, I don't know how well you can see it, but there is a slight lighter brown in some of these areas. And so that gave the weathering, sort of worn out look to the leather. What else? Again, yeah, more of the sort of drips coming out of the cracks there. My imagination with that was like dirty rain, you know, atmospheric conditions and stuff just building up and slowly dripping down. What else? Cosmetically, it was just kind of doing that again and again at random intervals around the helmet, just kind of where you can think stuff is going to be dripping down and accumulating. You know, I don't really know how to explain it the best because honestly, this is my first time doing something of this scale. And for a first time, I think it's good. I don't know. Maybe someone out there will find it with more professional opinion and tell me what to fix, what to work on. I mean, I watched a couple videos, but you know, I can only infer so much. From there, I did the padding. I just had some leftover foam from a old, you know, past project and put 2 bands on the inside. It came with that red lens, so this whole thing was actually something I ordered, which I actually feel like I need to elaborate on. I tried looking for the shop, or the person, right, that I had ordered this from on Etsy. And I was even asked, like, oh, how much did it run you? It's like, well, it was reasonably priced. I think it was like, what? Let me see. Like 120 or something, because because I bought a raw unpainted one, right? So the whole thing looked like this, you know, like this very light gray. The whole thing was like that. But the shop, apparently they closed down, and jogging my memory a bit, it makes sense because everything they had was on sale. Like the fully painted ones and so forth. A lot of them were around 220, but they were throwing everything on sale for like $100 off. So I said, sure, I'll take it. And it's good quality. I like it. You know. Now for that original price, I would not know. However, um, so as far as giving them a shout out, I don't know if it would really do any good. It was like BDA Airsoft or something off of there. Yeah, which is kind of sad. You know, I'd like to say, hey guys, you did great. I liked the helmet. It came out well. It painted up quite nicely. Yeah, from BD Airsoft Works. But apparently, I clicked around and searched, and the shop is closed. So, however, for any recommendations, I did see Yanovich. I can't pronounce his name. Um, he has similarly priced helmets and so forth on Etsy. So I thought I just had to kind of clarify that. You know, I didn't print this myself. I wish I had. I technically could make some space, but that's future me problem. Um, but yeah, so the printed one came out like that. Came with that red lens. I put that on the inside. However, I wanted to add a little spacing lens on the outside just to protect the inner one because it's kind of thin. I wanted to protect it from scratches and so forth. So I cut out some, what's it? I can't remember the actual technical term, but you can buy sheets of this clear plastic at Home Depot. And I think it's polycarbonate. I could be wrong. But I had some spare pieces left over, and I cut out little circles and hot glued those in. So there are double lenses on this particular one. Still got strings of hot glue stuck on there. And once that was finished, oh yeah, one last thing. This was actually initially closed. I took a spade bit and punched a hole through there. So I drilled that so that the circulation, a lot of the tubing, because the tube that you saw on the chest piece, that box, that came with this, but a lot of it was closed off and was purely cosmetic. So simply drilling holes through it made it functional, thankfully. It was easy enough to drill through, but strong enough to not break when drilling through it. So, some modification required. Thank you, motorcycle. There's not too much else to tell because I, again, don't know all the technicalities of it. A lot of this was just winging it and improvising, but I'm happy with how it came out. I do have some, like I said, I'll have some photos that have been throughout this video showing up, showing the process. But, yeah, I like it. And the camera doesn't really do it justice, you know, just catching all like the dirt and everything. You know. So, oh yeah, so let me finish off with what I did. So after that first layer of weathering, so I did the structural weathering, filling those cracks in with the steel color, seal coat it, then I put the mud, some of the oils, all that. I seal coat it again, and what that did is it actually sort of, like up here, you can see the best example, is it basically diffused a lot of the sort of little powders and oils that I put on there. So it kind of diffused it, diluted it, which might seem like a bad thing. However, going over with a second layer of the powders and a second layer of the oils, basically, again, building up on it, made it seem, again, a little more realistic in my opinion, because now you got layers on layers of this mud and oil and soot and so forth. So it allowed me again to just kind of add more depth to the effects. And then I did not seal coat it again. So that second layer of mud and oil, that's just out there, exposed basically. The oil I'm not worried about, the shaders and so forth. All right, I'm back. Had to go make supper and clean up and everything. You know, life is. It is what it is. As I was saying though, the Tamiya shaders, these little pigments, powder things, they will wear a little bit. They'll smear and maybe wash off if I have to go out in the rain. Who knows? Waiting in line to get into a convention, it might rain occasionally. Who knows? However, those washing off are not too big of a problem because I can just reapply them. That adds an extra customization option. You know, if I want to change something, I can just add a bit more or take it away. So that's, you know, not a good or bad thing, really. Let me think. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. No, I covered all the padding, right? Lenses and the painting process and ventilation. There's not much else to add, you know. It's like I said, it's a little bit of, there are general rules to follow and a lot of other more technical videos to look up on YouTube, but it's just kind of randomize it and customize it how you like it, you know. And you know, I have faith it'll come out good for you, you know. In my case, you know, not having the exact expertise, you know, you just compensate with taking it slow and spending a little extra time on it, you know. Spend a little extra time on each step just to get it right. So for our first attempt, I think it turned out pretty well. And like I hinted at earlier, if you know a bit more about this, let me know. I'm going to give me some pointers. I'm still open to learning. Yeah. For anyone who wants to drop a comment. But, as you can probably tell by the drastic lighting change between the first portion of this video and right now, it's getting late. So I'm going to pack it up, edit this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.